The cameras captured every moment of Sabalenka and Eala's courtside explosion. The tennis world will never forget what began as a tight rally. The entire match was altered by a single glare, yell, and line call. Microphones captured the ruckus, the crowd gasped, and neither player gave up. Eala's disobedience and Sabalenka's rage are two forces merging under duress. Now, pride was more important than points. There was something more profound, something simmering beneath the surface, behind every serve and every look. It was too late when security intervened. The entire globe had witnessed it. Legends commented, fans disagreed, and videos went viral on the internet in a matter of minutes. The same question is this tension had been building. Aryna Sabalenka, the current dominant force in women's tennis, and Alexandra Eala, the up-and-coming star determined to make her mark in the same elite realm, faced off match after match and glance after glance. Sabalenka's intensity had always been well known. A player with passion, and unreserved strength. A stadium may tremble from her roar. A camera might be silenced by her look. She was a storm, not simply a rival. Eala, on the other hand, stood for something different: control, calmness, and precision. Her game was based on discipline and determination, and she was a rising star who represented the aspirations of a new generation. Eala froze time where Sabalenka burnt fiercely. It was during the trip that their paths first came into contact, with a brief handshake. However, those who witnessed it were aware that something unsaid began there. Eala didn't flinch when Sabalenka's rounds thundered past her. Perhaps it was the disparity in their personalities. Perhaps it was the rumors that the next major tennis star was from the Philippines, and she didn't fear the established order. It's the kind of night when legends are built or broken, a high-stakes match in a crowded arena under muggy lighting. Even though Sabalenka was the clear favorite, Eala remained unfazed. Reporters saw how composed she appeared throughout warm-ups, her eyes fixed, earbuds in, and her demeanor unreadable. But Sabalenka was different. She paced, muttered to herself, and was restless. From the sidelines, her coach's voice could be heard. Take a breath. Simply engage in your game. The initial games were thrilling. Each rally has a purpose. Each stroke seemed to convey a message, and the sound of the ball striking the strings felt heavier and harsher. For the first match, the top seed appeared shaken when Eala broke Sabalenka's serve early. A moment of annoyance. A fist clinched. The crowd knew a storm was on its way. The animosity between them started to be discussed in whispers by commentators. There's no love lost here, someone said. It's palpable. This is private. The score became more competitive. Under the lights, sweat gleamed. Eala's composed assurance only made. Sabalenka was more agitated, which was a risky combination for someone who exploited feelings. Cameras captured the flash when Eala passed Sabalenka during a changeover and their shoulders touched. Sabalenka turned, her eyes icy and her jaw clenched. Both women returned to the court with something heavier than strategy or technique as the chair umpire called time. The Spectators was unaware at the time, but that glance and that one flash of defiance would be the spark that ignited everything. It was no longer just tennis. Under the lights, pride, reputation, and emotion collided, and the explosion was just a few seconds away. It was the kind of incident that permanently defines rivals. It happened in an instant. In the second set, the score was 4-3, and the tension was like static. Eala was serving, her rhythm perfect and her eyes serene. However, Sabalenka was agitated, pacing between points, shrugging her shoulders, and giving her opponent a fierce look as if she were attempting to break her with just her gaze. Then it took place. The phone call. With a blazing ace down the tee, Eala's serve clipped the line. Sabalenka's hand immediately shot up as the audience screamed, "Get out!" Her expression was one of disbelief as she yelled at the umpire. The chair umpire shook his head calmly but warily. It was a good ball. There was silence for a moment. That perilous quiet before chaos. With a harsh voice, Sabalenka argued as she moved toward the net. That was eliminated. Everyone witnessed it. Eala remained motionless as she stood on her baseline. With a detached, icy gaze, she only stared back. That served as the catalyst. Sabalenka detested being disregarded, particularly in the light of the court. She pivoted to face Eala. "Do you believe that was in?" At last, Eala responded in a quiet, sharp voice. The decision was made by the umpire. Engage in play. Not because of what she said, but rather because of how she delivered it, the audience gasped. She seemed to be the adult in the room, composed and in control. Sabalenka tightened her jaw. Cameras focused on her face, capturing her anger, disbelief, and pride all at once. Next was the serve. Eala tossed the ball high, hit it clean, and hit another ace in the same location. Sabalenka did not put up a fight this time. Frustrated, she swung her racket through the air, missing the ball she had thrown up to serve next. The audience muttered. Something was unraveling, and you could feel the vibe changing. Commentators made an effort to stay up to date. One said, "Sabalenka's losing focus here. She's allowing emotion to take control." Sabalenka won the next point with a forehand, but their shoulders touched once more as Eala passed her. Sabalenka turned completely toward her this time though. She yelled, "Watch where you're walking." Eala didn't falter. Instead, then focusing on the player, focus on the ball. It burst in an instant. Sabalenka let go of her racket and approached Eala while yelling words that were only partially captured by the microphone. "Calm down," the umpire said as he stepped up. Not on the court yet, but prepared, security moved closer. Every perspective was attempting to capture the moment the decorum broke as the audience buzzed, phones were out, and cameras were recording. Even Eala's coach got up and gestured for her to back off, but she remained motionless. Standing barely meters apart, two players, one driven by anger and the other by defiance, refused to blink. Then the last spark appeared. The stadium descended into hysteria when the umpire yelled, "Code violation, verbal abuse, Miss Sabalenka." There were clapping, cheers, and boos, but nobody was sure which side they were on. What was Sabalenka's response? She chuckled. Dangerous, cold, and caustic. And the world's best player, Aryna Sabalenka, was captured on camera at that same time by cameras rolling from every angle. Eala's jaw tightened as she looked aside, but the harm had already been done. The peace was broken. The game had become a struggle of ego rather than competence. The video was all over the place in a matter of minutes. Slow-motion replays from broadcast cameras and fan phone clips both depict the same occurrence. While officials hurried to restore calm, Aryna Sabalenka stormed at Eala and yelled across the net. Instead of waiting for explanations, the internet generates its own. Within an hour, hashtags like #AgylaVasabalenka and #TennisMeltdown raced to the top of Twitter. It was referred to as dishonor by some and passion by others. "This isn't competition, it's chaos," a fan wrote. "What became of sportsmanship?" Another said, "What makes Sabalenka great is her fire. Don't make her a bad person." But it wasn't just fans. Journalists, commentators, and past players also jumped in. Legendary tennis player Chris Evert tweeted, "Respect should never leave the court, but emotions are part of the game." In the meantime, a sports writer penned a headline that went viral, "Eala stands tall, even Sabalenka couldn't break her focus." The anxiety only increased back at the competition. The cameras focused on both benches during the subsequent changeover. In an attempt to ground Sabalenka, her coach leaned closer and whispered urgently. Eala sat quietly, covering her head with a towel, not even looking across the court. Before another storm, there was silence. Then the shoulder bump and replay appeared on the enormous screen. As the scene replayed, the audience exploded. Eala's composed stroll by, Sabalenka's stare, gasps, jeers, and cheers. The umpire had to stop the game twice to quiet the crowd because the arena was split in half. Sabalenka once yelled something about respect at the throng. The emotion was obvious, even though the microphones didn't capture it well. She was now battling perception and the dread of being portrayed as the aggressor rather than just Eala. In the meantime, Eala used her poise as a weapon. Fans remarked that Eala seemed to become more composed and unflinching every time Sabalenka lost her rage. After a heated debate, Eala was seen returning to her chair in a widely shared TikTok video with the remark, "When calm is louder than chaos." It received over 1 million views in a matter of hours. The incident was repeatedly aired on sports stations. Commentators argued over who went too far. "We've seen Sabalenka emotional before, but this," one anchor remarked, "AA feels distinct. This seems intimate." merely the press conference following the game. AA stoked the fire. "I'm emotional, certainly, but I'm human," Sabalenka stated in a tight voice. "Everyone occasionally loses control." Eala's statement, however, struck a different chord. Calm, exact, practically surgical. "I'm here to play tennis. What takes place beyond the points? I'll let others make that decision." It was the quotation that people all across the world heard. Fans interpreted the video as a veiled jab after it was aired on many networks. A subtle way of expressing that Eala had retained her spirit whereas Sabalenka had lost herself. In the digital equivalent of a divided stadium, Team Eala and Team Sabalenka were trending side by the next morning. The match had outgrown the plot. Whether they wanted it or not, it was now a movement, and both women had come to represent something much greater than tennis. The tennis world was in disarray the morning following the explosion. The event was what made headlines, not the score. It was featured prominently in every major outlet. Sabalenka becomes uncontrollable. Eala steals the show with her composed resistance. Social media was inundated with videos from every angle. Reaction memes, slow-motion edits, and comments from those who hadn't even watched the game. Everybody had a viewpoint, and each viewpoint provided more fuel. It was a living nightmare for Aryna Sabalenka. No amount of public relations could stop the noise, despite her team's best efforts to restrict the interviews, damage statements, and clarifications. Concerns regarding her behavior on the court were voiced in private by a few sponsors. An planned campaign starring her was even put on hold by one business. This was unusual for a player who was renowned for her strength and control. Her tennis was no longer the focus. It has to do with her fury. Even Sabalenka attempted to minimize it. She stated, "I play with emotion," in a post-match interview. "I am that person. I responded on the spot. I didn't go overboard." However, fans weren't persuaded. The video of her approaching Eala while yelling and with fiery eyes told its own tale. Eala's silence, meanwhile, served to emphasize the story. Beyond her brief remark, she declined to comment. No interviews, no social media posts, and no responses. She became something more potent than a victor as a result of her silence and self-control. She came to represent poise, decency, and quiet strength, the calm in the midst of chaos. Eala's camp wasn't immune, though, despite the quiet. Officials from the tournament reportedly phoned her coach to discuss issues related to sportsmanship, despite the fact that she hadn't started the argument. In order to seem impartial and to demonstrate that they were treating all participants fairly, the organizers faced pressure. It was the kind of politics that takes place behind closed doors and in silence. A brief statement was issued by the Women's Tennis Association. "We remind every athlete of the expectations for behavior in court. Disrespect is not acceptable, but passion is." Everyone knew who it was directed at, even if it didn't name anyone. It hurt Sabalenka. Her reputation as a fighter rather than a villain had been earned over years of hard struggle. Every camera now watched her in a different way, analyzing each match to look for signs of another outburst. Even a frustrated racket drop during her subsequent appearance caused the audience to gasp. It was the other way around for Eala. Overnight, her fan base grew rapidly. Tens of thousands of new admirers. She was praised in articles as tennis's next mental powerhouse. But celebrity also brought with it pressure. Suddenly, the player who dealt with Sabalenka was the epitome of poise. However, both women realized in their hearts that the world didn't really care about justice or the truth. Their competition had created the ideal storm for the drama it desired. "It's no longer about who won the contest," as one writer put it. "It's about who prevailed in that particular moment, and neither really did." Days went by, but the tension didn't go away. Instead, it changed. Beneath the polished interviews and formal pronouncements, a mixture of quiet, pride, and sorrow was simmering between the two women. Aryna Sabalenka felt as though the world had shrunk. She was now the subject of criticism rather than the hero of highlight reels. She was pushed by her squad to move on and concentrate on the upcoming event, but she was unable to do so. She couldn't stop thinking about that one moment, that one stare down with Eala. It reminded her of what she had lost, not because she detested her opponent. Command. After the game, Sabalenka reportedly lingered behind and refused to talk to anyone, according to a leaked locker room report. She sat by herself, head down, eyes red, still wearing her match kit. She appeared to be someone who no longer recognized herself, according to one official who observed her. Eala, meanwhile, was dealing with the fallout in her own way. She had transformed into the calm star, the embodiment of self-control, to the outer world. However, those who were close to her were aware of the reality. She wasn't unharmed. That night, she had sobbed due to tiredness rather than guilt or terror. She had no desire to be involved in a scandal. Instead of being recognized for someone else's breakdown, she wanted to be known for her game. Days later, she finally spoke, slowly and calmly, in a modest press interview. As a player, I admire Aryna. Sometimes emotions get the better of you. Although I don't condemn her for it, I hope that situations like these teach us anything. The conversation's tone was altered by that one quote. Supporters who were prepared to escalate the rivalry into a conflict started to wane. Sabalenka saw it, too. One of her team members claims that she silently read Eala's statements before whispering that she didn't need to say that. However, she did. Irony. Tension was already anticipated by the organizers. However, Sabalenka didn't turn away when she noticed Eala across the room. We both lost that day, she whispered softly as she approached and held out her hand. Let's ensure that it doesn't occur once more. Eala gave a nod. Deal. There were just two athletes discovering a sliver, no cameras rolling, no viral videos. Of harmony in a world that desired only strife. However, the tale persisted even after that handshake. That exact moment, Eala's gaze, Sabalenka's yell, and the explosion that split the sport, was used in every highlight reel and tournament review. In actuality, these kinds of events endure and become a part of tennis history. Tennis thrives on rivalry, as one pundit succinctly put it. However, rivalry can sometimes reveal more about mankind than success. The noise can be muffled by time, but the memory cannot. The impact of that courtside explosion is still felt months later, not only in highlight reels but also in the perceptions of both players. It turned into a time of reckoning for Aryna Sabalenka. She appeared to be a calmer, more collected version of herself in the following tournaments. Reporters saw it right away. Something had changed behind the eyes, but the ferocious roars persisted. She started talking more candidly about mental control. In one interview, she even said, "I'm learning that power doesn't always have to come with fire. Strength can be silent at times." The impact of those words was distinct. They sprang from a player who had successfully navigated the turmoil of her own emotions. The event marked Eala's unofficial arrival. She moved from being a budding star to making headlines across the world, not because she won a trophy, but rather because of how she handled pressure. Interviews, invitations, and sponsorships flooded in. Fans weren't really impressed by her success, though. It was that she never took advantage of the occasion to make fun of or degrade Sabalenka. She maintained her composure, deference, and concentration, an unusual level of maturity for someone so young. As the season progressed, fate reunited them, this time as professionals on the same stage rather than as adversaries. There was no tension or hostility between them when they met at the Players' Lounge during the tour finals. Instead, they simply nodded to each other, acknowledging what that event had taught them. Fans continued to argue online. While some claimed Sabalenka had lost her temper, others countered that she was simply enthusiastic. But despite the commotion, one thing was clear: both ladies had changed as a result of that evening. It revealed the fine line that separates pride from patience, emotion from control, and cold from fire. The explosion, the yells, the viral videos, and the split crowd will always be remembered in sports. However, a deeper glance will reveal something different. A tale about two athletes who discover what it truly means to walk the fine line between grace and grandeur. Tennis ultimately prevailed. It developed a rivalry based on growth rather than hatred. Fans were reminded of their original motivation for watching the game by this rivalry. For humanity as a whole, not only for victory. Because athletes aren't robots under the bright lights, the cheers, and the pressure. They can break, learn, and heal in front of millions of people because they are human. Perhaps that's why this narrative is important. Because it was a mirror reflecting the fire, the imperfections, and the brittle beauty of competition itself, rather than merely a confrontation between two players. What are your thoughts? Was this rivalry the result of anarchy or the kind of fervor that sustains tennis? Tell us in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe today for more unseen tales, rivalries, and poignant moments from the world of women's tennis. We're just getting started.